right, we are live now. Let me just close this window here. Okay, how's everyone doing out there? Hope we're coming through well. Hope you guys can hear me, can see me. You should be seeing in the video screen Peter Lavelle, host of RT's Crosstalk in Moscow, and Alexander Mercouris, the Oracle of London in London. Guys, we'll try to keep this to about an hour, this stream today, and we'll focus on what's going on in the US, the insanity of the impeachment process, whether we're gonna have a trial or not. I've heard conflicting news on both ends, that McConnell's gonna press with the trial, McConnell's not. We'll talk also about the Democrat debates, specifically Bernie Sanders versus Warren. And of course, we'll kick it off with Mr. Comrade McConnell. Someone in the chat, actually, the first chat message from John said, Comrade McConnell. Was the first man in space, actually. That's the message. But let's talk about Pelosi's comment that McConnell is a Russian agent, or that the Russians have something on McConnell. She actually said that during a caucus meeting. And I'm starting to believe that Pelosi has both gone insane and actually believes this entire Russia did it narrative. I'm starting to believe this is not some kind of elaborate plan by the Democrats. I think she actually buys into it now at this point in time. So guys, let's get moving. Let's get started so we can get as much news as we can in within the hour. Alexander, Peter, what do you guys think?
Well, can I just quickly say, I mean, and it's a very quick observation. People who are becoming increasingly desperate start to lose touch with reality. Exactly. I mean, that seems to me the situation with Pelosi. I mean, if she's really going down this kind of rabbit hole, I was talking about McConnell of all people being a Russian asset or something. I mean, she's just I mean, she really has lost touch with reality, and it shows how desperate the Democrats are. Their impeachment ploy is unraveling, and their candidates, who we'll talk about, are completely unconvincing.
Well, ditto. I mean, before we started this podcast, I think Alexander Christopher can attest that I said exactly the same thing. I mean, when you've gotten to the point where you cannot explain how you've gotten yourself into such a predicament, you're going to lash out with irrationality, and that is irrational. I mean, I've been around American politics as long as I've been an adult, and going to the extreme of questioning someone's patriotism. That's really, it was very rare, and now it's very commonplace. And I think that this shows a sign of the times where rhetoric is so reckless. And the thing is that, and I've been saying this ever since the election, is that you can't unring these bells. When you say something like that, you can't really take it back. Okay, I mean, you can say your decision-making is ill-founded, and I doubt your logic, and maybe you should reassess. I mean, you can walk those things back, okay? But if you call someone a Russian agent, I mean, you better have the evidence, or else calling someone a Russian agent means nothing. It's just a slur. And that's coming from the speaker, okay? There are lots of backbenchers, to use a British term, in American politics that say crazy and stupid things, but no one pays really much attention to him. This is a Speaker of the House. Okay, McConnell is leading the Senate, and he makes the rules. Okay, that's his gig. Okay, that's his house. Yeah. Nancy, you play in your house, but now McConnell's in his house, and he's going to do what he wants to do, as it is said in the Constitution and elaborated in the Federalist Papers. So this is really simple stuff. And the question is that if it will just be thrown out on its face before it even really gets started. That's really the only question I have, okay? We can talk about who's the witnesses and all of this, but I've said here in the past, I mean, Supreme Court Justice Roberts might just enter the chamber and look at the charges, and he might just throw it out. He'll say, this is a political matter. Why'd you bring me here, okay? The Supreme Court has nothing to say on this. And if you send it to me, I'm going to send it back to you. This is a political thing. And the court does not want to get involved in that. And they all know this is coming. See what Nancy's trying to do is she's trying to choreograph the ending, because we all know what the ending is.
It gets better, actually, guys. So far, McConnell has not responded, from what I understand. He hasn't responded to Pelosi's claim. But we now have the latest Russian hack, which is by this group called this DC tech consulting firm called Area One, where I think one of the founders actually used to work at CrowdStrike.
Yeah,
the other guy is a CIA spook.
This sounds like Area 51 to me. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's Area One is what they're called. And these guys are now coming out with the claim that the Russians have hacked Burisma in order to, from what we understand right now, the narrative is in order to spread some stuff about Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. So, I mean, they're kind of getting ahead of this story with the ridiculous claim of Russians hacking Burisma.
They all think we're stupid. Okay. This is obviously a preemptive move to deal with if in case Hunter Biden is called as a witness. So that what they're doing is they're sabotaging this. Is that no matter what comes out, it must not be true because it's a hack and by those evil Russians. Okay, this is a preemptive move. Okay, it's obvious. Okay, and then when you look at the people in Area One and these other places, they're all connected to the Democrats. I mean, this is so transparently dumb. Okay,
connected to CrowdStrike.
Well, and the FBI shakes in its boots. Don't question CrowdStrike. Oh my God! How many more times can you play this game?
Yeah, I just wanted to add something. The Russians don't need to hack Burisma. They know everything about Burisma. Burisma is a Ukrainian company. Everything in Ukraine, the Russians know. I mean, my dog is barking in agreement. They've got a total knowledge about everything which goes on in Ukraine. This is a totally stupid.
Because the place is a sieve. It's a sieve. Okay.
Exactly. The idea that they have to actually carry out elaborate hacks of Burisma and that they've only done it now, as if they didn't already know everything about Hunter Biden, about his bribes, as if they couldn't obtain any document in Ukraine they wanted to. Okay? It's all absurd. Just about this.
Your door's ringing, Alexander.
No, I mean, just to pick up where Alex left off there, I mean, that's so obvious that, you know, this is something that the Russians would already know about. Do they have dirt? Maybe they do, maybe they don't, but they certainly know what's going on. Look, even before all of this happened, before anyone in the public heard the word Burisma Holdings, okay, they were under investigation in the UK for corruption. I mean, anyone that was knew of or associated with that company knew what was going on. And that includes the Russians as well. So, I mean, they make it sound like, you know, it's like Soleimani, you know, we've been talking about him and known about him for a very long time, but it only took, you know, the last 2 weeks of news cycles, people heard the name. And the same thing with Burisma. Burisma had a long history of corruption. Everybody knows that's corruption 101 in Ukraine. And so having, you know, the New York Times come out with this breaking story. I mean, it's childish, all right? And it has everything to do to preempt a possible testimony by Hunter.
What about to preempt, Peter, maybe the fact that Biden is going to be the candidate?
Yeah, well, we can
possible
get into
candidate.
that. Yeah. But okay, obviously that's the extension of it. I'm glad you brought it up because that kind of widens the circle of it.
Yeah.
But right, exactly. It's protection, and I think also the Biden camp I think is quite active because we'll talk about the spat between Bernie and Elizabeth Warren. I think it was the Biden campaign that released that conversation. Okay, I think that was that politics is dirty and mean. Okay, and so I think the Biden camp is very active right now because well, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. We're going to stay with this ridiculous leak, but you're right. I mean, this is all calculated to insulate the candidacy of Joe Biden, which seems to be in witness protection. You know, they're really doing everything they can to control the narrative around him because Joe, shut up, don't say anything, and we'll create these events around you to protect you. That's essentially what's going on. If you watch the last Democratic debate, Joe kept his mouth shut for the most part, and that's to his advantage.
Yeah, he's gotten off really easy, hasn't he, Alexander? Joe Biden with this whole Burisma thing, Hunter Biden. He's gotten off really, really easy because this is a huge scandal.
If this had been a Republican or if it had been one of Trump's kids, I mean, this would have just, oh man, this would be all over the place nonstop like Russiagate was, okay?
Absolutely. I mean, he's been propped up to an extraordinary degree and no interest in what went on. And this endless recitation that neither Joe Biden nor Hunter Biden did anything wrong, which of course is simply not true. And can I just add, by the way, there is a very, very interesting documentary which is doing, made in France, about Joe Biden's activities in Ukraine and the origins of Russiagate, which there are all sorts of attempts to try to stop it appearing on Facebook, on wherever you like. I mean, you can't really put it on social media.
So it's another Browder.
It's another Browder situation, exactly. And you can find it on a few select websites. But it basically shows that Joe Biden, the first part of it shows that Joe Biden, when he got the prosecutor, Sharkin, sacked and brought in this man, Lutsenko, knew perfectly well that Lutsenko was absolutely corrupt up to his ears, as everybody in Ukraine was. So where you have Joe Biden talking all the time about, fighting corruption in Ukraine, and his policies, in fact, entrenching corruption in Ukraine.
The poster child for corruption.
And his son, of course, is employed by a company, Burisma, which is notorious for corruption. And Joe Biden has done nothing wrong. Well, really, I mean, but he's able to get away with it because the entire media is basically has lockdown on this story. Any attempt to try and bring it up is furiously resisted. And if you're even hint that there might be something in it, then you get called a Russian stooge, and we've seen comrades.
Well, that's right. We go full circle here because that's exactly why Nancy is really nervous, because if she wants to open up that can of worms with witnesses, well, McConnell can play that game. Okay, fine, and it will be to the detriment of the Democrats, and it will embarrass the media. So it's really extraordinary. If you live in a glass house, don't throw stones, Nancy.
The interesting part is that all of these politicians' kids were involved in Ukraine.
Yeah.
From Biden to Kerry to Pelosi, all of them had their fingers in the Ukrainian corruption.
Carpetbaggers.
And isn't it exactly? And isn't it interesting, guys, that I predict in 2-3 months, they went after Burisma. I predict maybe even shorter, 1 month. You won't even be able to post stuff about Burisma on social media or do a video on Burisma, because it's going to be, this is a conspiracy theory. You can't talk about this stuff or happened, finished. I mean, this is why they put this whole script together about Russians hacking Burisma. You want something to disappear into the memory hole? The Russians did it.
Exactly.
The Russians hacked it.
Exactly. I mean, it's as I said, I mean, we have an extraordinary situation where you can't talk about Mr. What's his name? Zaklovsky, and this utterly corrupt Ukrainian.
You mentioned Browder too. Peter mentioned Browder.
Exactly.
You can't talk about
that. Exactly.
CIA whistleblower, nothing.
Whistleblower. You can't talk about any of these things. Well, of course, you can't mention the name of the whistleblower who.
You know what this reminds me of? You know what this reminds me of? It reminds me when I lived in Poland in the 1980s. Is what you could say in public and what you couldn't say, because there was lots of people. A lot of people were. I'm talking about the suppression of the Solidarity trade union movement. Okay, which 1/3 of the adult population was a member of at one time, and then it was squashed and it went underground. And so people talked about it at home and among themselves, but in public, it was as if it never existed. This is exactly the same thing. This is exactly the same thing. People I've learned, and I think that there have been some of these incidents, we'll leave it at that, that social media used as a model to see how they can control people, how they control public discourse. All right. I mean, the Epstein thing, I mean, everyone is red-faced by that. Okay. That's another perfect example. There is so much I'd like to know, and no one wants to, in power, wants to ask these questions, really? It's extraordinary. And there's so many of these data points now, topics that you have to avoid. They're trying to control the public sphere. And it looks to me, it's working.
Yeah,
it's working. You can't talk about Epstein. We do a video on Epstein. It's automatically demonetized right away.
Yeah.
It doesn't get any traction. No one sees it.
With us, they're watching the keyboard. I mean, they know in advance.
And pretty soon you won't be able to talk about Burisma. Watch. It'll be labeled as a conspiracy theory, and Biden and his son are going to skate away free from this one.
Well, unless
remains to be seen.
Yes, I was going to say, unless, of course, eventually the Justice Department catches up with them, which it may do.
Right.
Now, can I just...
You're talking Barr and Durham.
And Barr and Durham and all that, which, let us be very clear, this Ukrainegate conspiracy, hoax, fantasy impeachment is partly an attempt to try to obstruct and to divert attention away from. So, I mean, this is why it's been pursued in this fervid and extraordinary way. So it's possible that eventually the whole thing will move full circle, and we will eventually get there. But I agree, if we do get to that point, and there's no guarantee we will, it will be a very rocky road before we finally get there.
You know, one of the things also, let's be very clear here, I use the term carpetbagging when it comes to Ukraine after the illegal overthrow of the democratically elected government in 2014. I mean, let's be very clear to everyone. This was a bipartisan carpetbagging. That's another reason why people are not going to talk about it, because other people are going to get implicated in it as well. All right. I mean, we have the poster childs for it, but there's a lot of people with very dirty hands, because Ukraine is a very corrupt place. And I warned people, you go there, you're going to get ensnarled in all of this. It's part of their culture. I mean, Russia has its corruption, but not like Ukraine. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
I mean, Lindsey Graham and John McCain were getting medals of honor from Poroshenko.
Yeah.
We can never forget. McCain was there, ground zero. He's giving speeches to the Maidan crowd.
Yes.
I mean, it's as bipartisan as it gets.
And standing by people with neo-Nazi affiliation.
Yes. Now, I have to say, I mean, this is talking about carpetbaggers and people going to Ukraine. It's actually also changed my understanding of the whole crisis in Ukraine, in the sense that I'd always assumed that there was a very strong delusional element about all of this in the US, that there were some people who really believed a lot of what they were saying about Ukraine, and that it was ideologically driven. I have to say, I don't believe that fully anymore. Clearly, the Bidens, all these people, knew exactly what Ukraine was all about, and they saw an opportunity there to make a lot of money also.
And to back that up, during the expert witnesses from the State Department and the former ambassador, I mean, what a whitewash, all of them, to whitewash exactly what's going on in Ukraine. I mean, they were hearkening back to American Minutemen fighting for independence. I mean, oh my God, what a stretch that is there. I mean, what it is they got in bed with a lot of corrupt people and made a lot of money, okay? And they don't want people to know about it. And it's as simple as that, okay? I mean, I've said before, and I'll say it again, foreign aid is a sham. It only increases corruption because it creates corrupt opportunities. That's what it does. And there are plenty of people that went there and stuffed their pockets with money. Because that's what you do, right?
Yeah, they made a lot of money. A lot of money.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy. All right, guys. So do you think they were going to have a trial or no trial?
I think there will be some kind of a trial in the Senate. I still think it's unlikely that the Senate will just move to dismiss it, or the Justice Robert will just move to dismiss it. I think that if that happens, the Democrats will say that there's been some kind of a big cover-up, and I think Roberts will want to avoid that becoming involved in that kind of controversy. So I think there will be a trial. I think it will be a quick one. I think that McConnell must be absolutely furious today to be called that by Pelosi. So he's not going to be at all accommodating to anything that she wants from him. Yes. I think the Republicans will dig in. I don't think there will be any witnesses called. I think the Democrats have put their case together.
Yeah, exactly.
Presented these articles of impeachment. The Republicans will say, we will try the case on the basis of the evidence you provided.
Right. So, signed, sealed, and delivered. Okay, they're going to do the process based on the findings and the decisions and the votes in the House. Okay, and that's the way it should be. Okay, this is not called creative impeachment. No. Go to the Constitution. It's all black and white. It's actually very easy to understand as well. Correct. So, and I think McConnell will play by those rules because he can. I mean, he can decide if there are witnesses, but if there aren't, that's his decision. Okay, that is his prerogative.
Absolutely.
As the a ranking member of his party in the Senate. So, again, it's your liberal media it's all spinning this as some kind of potential sham trial, but it's not. It's really quite simple. The House has come to its conclusions, and it's up for the Senate. They're all members of a jury, and they're going to vote on it. It's as simple as that.
They're not investigators. The Senate does not have an investigative role in this matter. Incidentally, when we talk about a trial, I think it is extremely important to understand that this is an impeachment trial. It's an impeachment process. I constantly see people talking about questions of bias and partiality, and how McConnell is supposed to have compromised himself by making it very clear that he's already completely unimpressed by these so-called grounds of impeachment. This is not a criminal trial. It is not conducted like a criminal trial. The Constitution gives the Senate the complete authority as to how it should conduct the impeachment trial when it goes to the Senate, and the fact that it is not a criminal trial is confirmed by the fact that there are no criminal charges. The articles of impeachment do not refer to a crime. So we are looking at a purely political process right from the get-go. This needs to be made very clear. It's a political process which will be conducted in accordance with certain legal rules and procedures, which is why the Chief Justice of the United States will be presiding. But it is not a trial in the sense that you get in a criminal court, and we should completely dispose of that idea.
Right. So you think McConnell's going to play it by the book trial, but a quick trial, and we're going to get back to the 2020 campaign, correct?
Yes. Absolutely, and why not? After all, the Democrats are imploding. We're going to get back to the.
That's what we want to lead into. Yeah,
exactly. I mean, Warren versus Bernie and all that. So why not? I mean, Trump he's got a strong economy. He's got a weak Democratic field. I as a Republican, McConnell will want the Republicans to win in 2020. And I think this idea that, preventing, calling all these witnesses is going to lose the Republicans the Senate in November is just childish. It just isn't going to happen. Nobody in November is going to vote on whether or not witnesses were called or were not called. What they will remember in November is that an attempt was made to impeach Donald Trump and the Senate threw it out, and that the Democrats have an incredibly weak field, and that the economy is strong. Those are the things that matter for Americans and for Donald Trump's base.
We can't discount. I mean, and I say this seriously. They'll keep trying. They'll come up with more articles of impeachment. Wow. They'll keep doing it. They will be unrelenting because they don't have anything else, any other plan. No. They've made their bed. Now they have to sleep in it. Okay.
Absolutely.
It's way too late. It's too late.
Yes.
So they're going to keep churning the same thing. That's why we have this Burisma story popped up. Okay. They need to contain that. All right. Because they have nothing else to do. I wish they did. Because that's, so that's what politics is all about. Presenting an idea and looking for support for it. Okay. They're not doing that. Okay. And we can move over to then the hopeless, sadly pathetic debate. Oh my God. Never thought I would see something like that in my life.
Yeah, we got two issues that people are talking about in the chat. One is the debate, Bernie Sanders versus Warren. I think that was pretty much took up all the oxygen in the room. There was Sanders and Warren. I'm not sure people paid attention to anybody else. And then you have the Project Veritas video leaking with the Bernie, I guess he's a campaign worker, campaign volunteer, saying that they're going to burn Milwaukee down. Yeah, they're going to put education camps and all kinds of crazy re-education camps, all kinds of craziness. So guys, let's get into Bernie Sanders and then Bernie Warren.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that it is quite obvious. I mean, it's interesting is that, Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, up until the last few days, the last couple news cycles, basically had a non-aggression pact, okay? Because for the most part, they do appeal to a lot of the same people, though no, not exclusively, because Elizabeth Warren is more of a social justice warrior and appealing to this political correctness and victimology and all of that. Now Bernie does a bit of that too, but he's really stayed true. And I'm going to be objective here. I mean, if you look at Bernie Sanders from the 70s to now, he's changed very little. All right, he really is, in his mind, an American version of socialism, and it is. Okay, that's a matter of fact. And the thing is that I'll jump into the controversy that apparently at one point Bernie told Elizabeth that a woman couldn't beat Trump. I don't believe that for a second. I don't believe that for a second.
No.
Bernie Sanders has been supporting women's rights, and when I was growing up, it was called woman's liberation back in the day. So the mere thought that Bernie would say that to Elizabeth Warren, I mean, he was actually suggesting that she run in 2016. He was saying that maybe she should go for a run. I mean, then that's on the record too. So Elizabeth Warren did something so nasty. Yeah. It's almost unthinkable. I mean, her credibility. I mean, do I believe her? No, I don't believe her, because she's told so many lies over the last during this election cycle. I mean, she just doesn't have any credibility. And if that's the only way you can beat Bernie to try to capture his followers, you're foolish. That's just foolishness. And it's really quite disgusting to have her use that card against Bernie. And this whole political correctness, as we said, they start eating each other, okay? It's coming home to roost, okay? Yeah. When you get into this identity politics, her trajectory is identity politics. Bernie is basically working class people, which, you know, I have a lot of sympathy for. I would have different ways in dealing with the working class and middle class than Bernie, but we both think about the same group of people. Elizabeth Warren destroyed her credibility with a lot of people with that spat. She wouldn't even shake hands with them at the end of the debate.
She's got a problem. Elizabeth Warren, Alexander, I think really has a problem telling the truth. I think it's a real psychological problem that she has in her head. She can't say the truth. And you mentioned, Alexander, something when we started this program about Nancy Pelosi and desperation. Yeah. Here we see Warren and desperation.
Well, indeed, put desperation. I mean, and on the question of the truth, wasn't it Elizabeth Warren who was, you know, the person who was descended from Indians, Native Americans, Native Americans, and it turned out that she wasn't, or at least not to anything like the extent that she said. But what has happened is that Elizabeth Warren, I think a few weeks ago, thought that she was going to be the person who was going to be taking on Joe Biden and would probably get the nomination, and she would be moving on to become the Democratic Party's candidate. And what's now happened is, I think, to her extraordinary horror, the old man, which is how I'm sure she thinks of him, Bernie Sanders, turns out to be more popular in many places than she is, and is overtaking her. And he's overtaking her in California and in Iowa and in all kinds of other places like that. So she brings this extraordinary story in. And it is desperation, because she wants to find some way of knocking Bernie off course. So she brings this extraordinary
cheap way to do it.
Absolutely. And of course, I don't believe it either. I mean, as people say, as Peter said, I mean, you know, an extraordinary allegation like this needs extremely strong evidence. It's simply not there. I don't believe Bernie said something like this. I'm sure he's never the sort of person who would have said anything like this. For one thing, he knows that it's not true. So why would he say it? And I understand, by the way, he is absolutely furious with Warren over this, and this very uneasy alliance has now completely broken down.
But who benefited from all of this?
Joe Biden.
Joe Biden. Yeah. Okay. He must have been chuckling all night long. You know, let those two fight it out. And you know what? It was about time. Okay, because there's such an overlap. The Bernie and Elizabeth, they attract a lot of the same people. Yeah, exactly. And so why don't they get it done with right now? And I'll tell you who else is happy about this is the DNC. because they don't want Warren and they don't want Bernie. Okay, they don't want these progressives. Okay, as a matter of fact, the DNC, and I would even say parts of the media, they would prefer to see Trump win over a progressive. Okay, that's how nasty these people are.
Would you say Warren is a progressive, though? I mean,
yeah.
Would it be fair to say that the DNC could stomach Warren, but definitely does not want Bernie? Is that also a fair assessment to say?
I think the DNC probably looks at both of them quite similarly, actually. Okay, because I mean they're both progressives, except for Elizabeth Warren has just enveloped the cultural wars much more than Bernie, because Bernie is much more. Bernie. For people in the UK, I mean he's like what was the Foot? What was his first name? The politician in the UK. What was he ran and lost. Anyway, he's an old school Labourite. But
Corbyn. You mean Jeremy Corbyn?
Well, no. Way back in the
Tony Benn.
Further back at the same time. Okay. Yeah. Okay, like Red Ben. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And so, I mean, there is an overlap here, but I still think the DNC would be very, very skeptical of Elizabeth Warren. And they would like Amy Klobuchar. They would like a Joe Biden, obviously, because they're going to just do a retread of 2016, and we all know how that ended. Okay, so I mean, like I said, I think the DNC would prefer these candidates to others because they can control them. Okay. And Elizabeth Warren isn't necessarily in that category. Now, having said that, if Elizabeth Warren were doing better, would she cave and concede to the DNC? Yeah, I think so. But she wasn't the one that they wanted. Okay, she's certainly not one the DNC likes. I mean, the fact that she's a woman, they like, of course, they like the diversity thing. But Elizabeth Warren has really gone out there and said some really extreme things, and the DNC wants their old style politics. They really want another Obama, okay? And Joe Biden is the best they can find, okay? And Amy Klobuchar, she had her last chance during that debate, and she blew it. Mayor Pete blew it. And Joe Biden was just snickering in the corner as Warren and Sanders were fighting it out.
Michael Foot, is that the person that you're thinking
about?
Michael Foot.
People in the chat are
Michael Foot.
putting his name out there.
Yeah. Can I just ask Peter, what about the theory which I have seen, which is that it was some people in the DNC who put Elizabeth Warren up to do this thing with Bernie, because as you rightly say, it's Bernie that they're really horrified by, and that in fact they are actually playing Elizabeth Warren and Bernie off against each other.
If the DNC put her up to it, then she was ambushed because it only worked to Biden's advantage.
Absolutely.
Okay? So, I mean, I tend to think, and I have no evidence of this. My gut tells me is that I think it was the Biden camp that released this. Okay, I don't think it was the DNC. I think it's Joe's people, his machine around him, that probably did it. We might never know how it happened. Okay? No, if it ever happened. Okay.
Yeah, but Warren is on the down. Bernie is on the up.
And you know what? I'm glad you said that, because I want everyone listening and for posterity. Alex Christopher and I, after the Bernie's heart attack, we dismissed him. We're wrong, and we always mention when we're wrong. Okay, his resurgence is extraordinary.
He is surging, and is it not fair to say that and Warren also has money issues, big time money issues. Yeah. Is it not safe to say that when Warren eventually does drop out, which she will now, that everyone that was in the Warren camp, or for the most part, most of the people, say 90% in the Warren camp, are going to shift over to Bernie.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And then you're looking at Bernie Biden.
Yeah.
Who takes it there? Because the people that support Bernie are hardcore.
Bernie bros.
People with Biden, they're kind of like, okay, like you said, okay, he's the next best thing we have to Obama.
Did you see the ice cream ad? The Biden with average citizens? Oh my God, it was so pathetic. It was so pathetic. Now, this is the thing. Bernie is a phenomenon. He's not just a politician.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are a lot of people, I think they're misguided in many ways, but there's a lot of people that like him. And I think it had been Bernie had been given a fair shot by the DNC in 2016, it would have been a real horse race against Trump because it was a change election. This is not a change election.
No, I agree with that. Yeah.
It's not a change election. That's why Trump's going to win.
Yeah.
All right. But 2016 was a change election. And that was the opening for Bernie. Now, the thing is that if Elizabeth Warren drops out, and she bloodied herself very badly.
She's in big trouble.
And that was an unforced error. It really was an unforced error. Then you're going to have an epic battle within the DNC because it's a replay of 2016. And so are they going to, through rules, deny it to Bernie again? They do that at their peril. They really, really do it at their peril because Bernie isn't going to run again. And people are still smart. You know, I don't remember the number, but it was almost like 15% of Bernie supporters voted for Trump because they were so angry with Hillary Clinton. All right. And that anger, Mitt Romney, how many people are upset that Mitt didn't win? Nobody remembers. Nobody cares.
Mitt's upset.
Oh, who cares
Still upset. Still upset.
Oh, still angry about it. Yeah, I agree.
Still angry.
God, he's in a club all of his own. That guy, really. But people do remember Bernie, and it's a life scarring event for them, and that's why he's still in play. So Trump has just got to be whistling Dixie, walking through the park, because if it's going to be Biden and it's going to be Bernie, that's blood. That's That's going to be a bloodbath. Okay, because the Bernie people say you're not going to do it to us again.
Alexander, what would a Bernie foreign policy look like, and what would a Biden foreign policy look like?
I think they would look very similar. Actually,
really?
I don't really get the impression.
They always do.
I'm not someone who. I mean, Bernie has been on occasion a little bit more, shall we say, dovish than the neocons particularly like, but foreign policy has never really interested him. That's certainly my impression. And I don't really think he's going to do anything to take on the Hawks in a particularly big way. He might be less keen on starting wars all over the place, but he bought into Russiagate. He supported the Guaido thing in Venezuela. He's not somebody who's going to really make radical changes.
And he caved on the Palestinian question.
And he caved on the Palestinians, exactly. Where he perhaps might make a difference is on Iran and the Middle East. He's probably more likely to tack back towards a more accommodating policy on that, but then probably Biden would too. So I think Biden might be more hostile to Russia than Bernie would be. But I don't think it's going to be any radical difference. That's my impression.
Well, I think, but isn't that something we've learned under 3 years of Trump?
Yeah.
Is that it doesn't matter who's president, the deep state. That testimony from the quote unquote Ukraine experts. I mean, that is the scourge. That was the swamp. You saw it. It has faces.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And it doesn't matter who the president is. These people are going to run their whimsical, career-advancing foreign policies that have nothing to do with the national interest and what the American people want. This is what's really most discouraging. It's so
Absolutely.
discouraging that we see this here. And again, Trump has allowed himself to be surrounded by these really malevolent forces. And if they can do it to him, they can easily do it to a Biden or a Bernie Sanders.
Indeed, there was. I don't know whether you read it, Peter, but there was a very sad article by Paul Robinson, Paul Finlay Robinson, Professor Robinson from Canada, in which he was saying, that he's been arguing against all these interventionist wars and neo-aggressive wars and neocon wars ever since the Yugoslav War of 1999, and he's always been proved right, and he always thinks that people will learn the lessons, and they never do, and governments change, and new presidents are elected, and the thing carries on exactly as before. And I'm afraid I don't think you're going to see in a Bernie presidency a fundamental change. If Tulsi Gabbard had been the candidate, then you might have seen a change, but she has been completely frozen out.
As has Andrew Yang.
Exactly, as the machine has worked overtime to make sure that those voices are not heard.
Yeah, I don't know if our viewers have been watching. I'm just kind of casually been looking at this, the Congress dealing with a non-binding war, dealing with the Presidential War Powers Act. And I just thought it was just so futile because it's kind of late in the game, don't you think, Congress? I mean, you've given away so much power to the executive when it comes to war making. And now you say you want some of it back. It's only because of Trump. It's not because of the principle.
No.
I mean, Congress has been so spineless in addressing this. I mean, remember what were one of the articles of impeachment against Nixon? Right? This is going to be like a trick question here. And we're playing a quiz show right now. But it was the illegal bombing of Cambodia. Remember? Those were one of the articles. Most people don't remember that. No. And because he did violate the War Powers Act. And we got the War Powers because of that, all right? So, you know, it's so bipartisan, it's so built into the mix that there's no challenging of the deep state. I'm trying to remember what one of my guests called it, but the benevolent state, okay? And this is a sad thing because that's a trajectory over different parties in power, all right? But that stays the same.
All right, the deep state, Michael Atkinson. Alexander, do you want to switch gears and talk about that a little bit before we get to the super chats, the ICIG? And from what I understand, this is where the entire CIA whistleblower narrative originated. Michael Atkinson and what happened there.
Indeed, and this, can we just say, this all originates with information obtained by Devin Nunes, this extraordinary representative on the House Intelligence Committee, who seems to be essentially the person who's leading the Republican counterattack on Russiagate within the Congress and on Ukrainegate within the Congress. And I mean, all credit to him. He has done an absolutely outstanding job. I don't know anything else about him, but on Russiagate and Ukrainegate, he's been marvelous. Now, what he's discovered, and it's been, well, he hasn't, I think, discovered it. What he's done is he's put together the pieces, and he's discovered that Atkinson, who is the Inspector General of the intelligence community, he's the person who's supposed to make sure that the intelligence community follows its correct procedures. He is the person who basically tried in a kind of way to uphold this whistleblower complaint that started Russiagate. Now, if we just go Ukrainegate, sorry.
Okay.
If
yeah,
we just
by changing the wording.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, the important thing to understand is that this whistleblower is not a whistleblower because he is not actually complaining about the organization he is working for, which is the CIA. He was complaining about Donald Trump and what Donald Trump was supposed to have said in a telephone call. So there was huge ambiguities about this. Anyway, it turns out that Atkinson has a very close connection, historic connection in the Justice Department to a senior Justice Department official called Mary McCord. Mary McCord, it turns out, was a very close associate of the former Deputy Attorney General, Sally Yates. Sally Yates was running the Justice Department during the brief period before Jeff Sessions became Attorney General. And she was quite openly and actively working against Donald Trump during that time. Firstly, she refused to, she undermined the enforcement of Donald Trump's famous executive order about, allowing people from the Middle East, certain Eastern countries, or rather preventing them from coming to the United States. And she argued she argued publicly that was an unconstitutional executive order. That has proved to be completely not true. Absolutely. The Supreme Court threw it out, and anyway, that was not her job to say.
She's never read the Constitution, apparently.
Well, exactly. Well, Sally Yates argued that. Mary McCord apparently also was involved in formulating all those kind of arguments. But the other thing was that Sally Yates, along with Mary McCord, was the person who created this extraordinary fantasy that Michael Flynn Donald Trump's national security advisor by talking before the inauguration to the Russian ambassador had somehow violated the Logan Act. This is this, absolutely obsolete fossil of a act going back to the sort of mid-19th century, which supposedly prevents private individuals from carrying out diplomacy.
No one's ever really been prosecuted.
Oh, absolutely. Nobody's been, exactly. It was a nonsensical argument, but it was used ultimately to bring down Michael Flynn, because it was the justification for sending the FBI, Peter Strzok and co, to interview him, and it set him up essentially for his fall. So Sally Yates was involved in all of that. Mary McCord was involved in all of that. Now, at some point, she left the Justice Department and went to work for this extraordinary organization called Lawfare. Now, some of our viewers may not know what Lawfare is, but Lawfare is a kind of intellectual, left-wing, center-left, pro-democrat factory for producing bogus legal arguments intended to bring down Donald Trump. That's essentially what Lawfare is. Mary McCord has been, was working there, and she's also, it turns out, now actually working for Adam Schiff at the House Intelligence Committee. Now, Atkinson, the Inspector General, it turns out, while she was at the Justice Department for 3 years, was her legal counsel. So he was a Justice Department official. He was working for Mary McCord. They were working together on all sorts of things. So it's increasingly looking as if Mary McCord had some role in this famous whistleblower complaint, which Atkinson pushed forward. She was there in the House Intelligence Committee. She's got these connections with Lawfare, and the theory that's being put together, it's only a theory because, we haven't got all the facts to, substantiate this, but the joining up of the dots, if you like, clearly points to Mary McCord, Atkinson, the whistleblower, and Adam Schiff all working together in concert to create this complaint. That's how it looks.
That's the collusion. Okay?
That's the collusion. That's the collusion. That's the swamp. So, people within people, a person, Mary McCord, with a history of hostility to Donald Trump, as I said, a sort of think tank in factory producing legal arguments against Donald Trump, a very ambitious and very aggressive chairman of the House of Intelligence Committee who's been spreading conspiracy theories against Donald Trump ever since Donald Trump was elected, and a mysterious whistleblower who has well-established connections to the Democrats. Well, there you have it all.
And now I think the FISA court has this David Chris guy.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Another one.
Yeah. Okay. Another one.
Yeah. Just another politicized justice figure that's going to be overseeing changes to the FISA court. What a joke! I mean, what a ridiculous! I mean, wow.
Well, I know. I mean, it's the revolving door, isn't it? It's the same people. You push them out, and then they simply come back in some other form, because that's essentially what happened. It is looking increasingly like the permanent government of the United States. So the FISA court has been massively embarrassed because Horowitz, the Inspector General of the FBI, comes along and says, that these terrible things were going on within the FISA court, with the Justice Department, with Comey, with all of this, all these FISA warrants that were obtained during the election and after the election were completely inappropriate and entirely wrong. So what happens? The FISA court issues an order requiring the US government to come up with all kinds of proposals for, how to remedy all of this. Has anybody heard about that? Has that order been complied with in any way? Of course not. And what we're now getting is a person put in charge of supervising the FISA court, who is clearly part of the same network that produced all these problems in the first place.
And it
really makes one despair.
It does make you despair because remember during the transition period from the election to Trump's inauguration, the hundreds and hundreds of leaks were felonious. And has there been any accountability for those people?
No.
All of the unmasking, has anyone been held accountable for any of that?
No.
It's extraordinary.
Yes.
We had the outgoing administration spying on a political opponent, and then a president elected, then way into his administration.
Yes.
And I'm not waving the flag for Donald Trump right now. I'm not. What I'm just saying, I look at this malignant force called the permanent state. That's what I'm most worried about.
Yes.
Presidents come and go.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, these people don't.
Well, that's right.
It's so true. You can't make this stuff up. No. I mean, really, you can't write a better script.
But what this is all about is that, we've known each other for quite a while now. When we've talked about this privately, a lot. And all that's happened in the last 3 years is just put flesh on those ideas that we have had.
Yes.
How relieved I am is that we're basically got it right all along, but then I despair because I know we're right. I mean, that's a really kind of depressing world to live in.
It is. Can I say, I mean, I am not someone who has I'm not an American. It's not for me to tell the American people whom they should have as president of their country. But the one overriding reason why I think that the right person to be re-elected in November is Donald Trump is precisely so that the various investigations that the Justice Department, that the Attorney General of the United States, William Barr, has put together to find out what's going on here are given time to get to the truth and hopefully result in prosecutions. I think that I agree with Peter here, I think this is much more important than who is the president of the United States. I'm sorry to say this, but if there was a conspiracy in 2016 to corrupt the political process, to corrupt the electoral process, to prevent Donald Trump being elected in a normal way by the American people, and to, have the sort of permanent state deciding who the president is, that is so serious that it is ultimately more important than whether you like Donald Trump or Biden or Bernie or whatever.
You don't need elections.
Exactly. Either the United States is a constitutional republic or it is not. And that is how high the stakes now are. So that is why ultimately I want to see Donald Trump elected. I have no other compelling reason than that. I just want to make that very clear because I'm sometimes spoken of as we're sometimes spoken of as Trumpians. I'm not, as I say, it's not my concern. I've known Bernie Sanders much longer than I've ever known Donald Trump. I've never taken Donald Trump very seriously until a few years ago when he suddenly became this political force. I've known about him as a rather bumptious, reality TV star and businessman. I never thought of him as a politician. Bernie Sanders, I've known about, since as far back as I can remember. So in some ways, in any normal situation, my sympathies would be with Bernie Sanders. But these are not normal circumstances. And that's why I want to see, as a non-American, because what goes on in the United States impacts on everybody. As a non-American, I want to see Donald Trump re-elected so that these investigations are brought through to their conclusion.
Amen.
Is that an endorsement, Alexander?
Yeah, it is. It's an endorsement. It's an endorsement of Donald Trump. I want to be very clear about this, but that is my reason for endorsing him. He says things from time to time, which I also agree with. He's spoken about better relations with Russia, for example. But overriding everything else, it is my concern to see constitutional rule of law reestablished in the United States, because that is in serious danger. And if it is the case, and I suspect it is the case, by the way, that the DNC had some role in setting a Warren off against Biden and all that kind of thing. Well, we see how all of that is still going on, and we've seen all the sort of censorship that's followed from that. Why would you need censorship of social media if you were not engaged in wrongdoing?
Yeah, cover up.
Exactly.
On a massive scale.
Massive scale. I mean, I want to be able to talk about entities like Burisma. What certainty do I have that I will be able to continue to talk publicly about entities like Burisma, unless the Justice Department investigations take their course? And it's not just Burisma, it's so many other things. That is the key issue for me in this election.
That's under the assumption that Barr comes through.
Well, if Barr doesn't do it, we can be absolutely certain that no one else will. Yeah. So it's a question of, a hope under Barr and an absolute certainty that any Democrat, Bernie, Warren, whomever, will bring all this to a stop.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Let's get to the super chats, guys. From Brave New Perth, of what importance is the Caucasus to Russia?
I think it is important in the sense that it is very important. I mean, one must understand that when there was a war in the Caucasus in the 1990s and early 2000s, it impacted on Russia. There was, violence, and people were planting bombs in Russian cities and blowing up apartment buildings and blowing up railway stations and planting bombs in the metro and all those sort of things. The Caucasus is hugely important to Russia. It's important economically as well, by the way, but it's also the hinge for Russia to protect its southern borders. And we must never forget also that the people of the Caucasus, the northern Caucasus that we're talking about, are Russian citizens. Most they identify with Russia. This is a thing I think a lot of people don't understand. Yes, there was a secessionist movement in Chechnya. There was also a jihadi movement in Chechnya and other parts of the Caucasus. They were never the majority of the people of the northern Caucasus. Most of them wanted to have nothing to do with that and continued to see the connection to Russia as the one they wanted to preserve. If you want to read the work of someone who understands the Caucasus well, Gordon Hahn is the person to go to. Yeah. He has written brilliantly on this subject, and he is far from being a supporter of Putin. He's a very strong critic of Putin, but he is a conservative American realist and an American patriot, by the way. But he went and studied the conflict in the Caucasus and was horrified by the way it had been misreported there.
Okay, Peter from Brave New Perth. Is Russia concerned with China's rise?
Well, of course it is. Okay, and Russia is engaging China as it rises. That's the logical thing to do. Yeah. We go back to the Thucydides trap. That's one option is to ignore it. Another one is to negotiate it. And the third one is to go to war. Well, Russia's engaging, and to its benefit, I would say, all right, to its benefit. Yeah. So, but of course, I mean, one of the things you have to understand is they talk about this insidious alignment, with Russia and China. It's always reported in such gloomy and frightful terms. But both countries have one thing that's very much in common. They very much prize their sovereignty. And Russia prizes its sovereignty very much, no different than China. And they respect each other's sovereignty. So, and that's one of the reasons why the relationship is working and blooming, because they have that in common. But Russia is a Russia first country, and China is a China first country, and they have to engage each other in mutual respect and to mutual advantage. So Russia is not subservient to China, and China doesn't necessarily agree with Russia on all things. But the more that the West demonizes them, particularly the United States, the more they have in common. I mean, historians will look back upon this and see this is just pure folly. Just, I was going to take a picture of it and put it on Facebook. I was going down Stary Arbat, and they have these antique shops. And I found this huge vase. I don't know how much it cost. And it had Stalin and Mao on this vase, And I was just thinking, it's interesting how things come back, okay? Because there was an alliance, because communism was what brought them together. That came to an end. China is still nominally a communist country, but what's brought them together is mutual geopolitical interests, and they are perceived as adversaries by the United States and the Washington Consensus. So it's really interesting, this kind of full circle that we've come about without ideology.
All right. From RJ, a $10 super chat. Love the Duran. Thankful for the Duran. Thank you very much, RJ, for that super chat. From Valley S, a $20 super chat. Thank you very much, Valley S, once again for that super chat. We appreciate it. And to both of you guys, very quickly, once again, $5 super chat from Temperman 101. By the way, the $1 million question: will Hillary step in the last minute?
Don't discount it.
Absolutely. I think it's more likely now than it has ever been. I mean, Warren and Sanders seem to be cancelling each other out almost. And Biden is an incredibly fragile candidate. I mean, we're talking about the ticking bomb of Ukraine underneath him. So it's entirely possible, I think, if all of these people fall by the wayside, that Hillary will come forward and
Warren drops out, Bernie's facing Biden, Hillary comes in, Biden's toast, Bernie faces Hillary. Peter.
Yeah.
Depends if they rig it again. You're going to have a civil war within the Democratic Party.
Well, indeed, yeah.
And again, I just have to wonder if these people are just thinking this out, because Bernie has got to be painfully aware that the DNC is still infested with Clintonites that have not want revenge for 2016. But for non-Americans watching this, Hillary Clinton is probably even more so than Donald Trump, I would say, because I kind of agree with Alexander Matiris. I mean, Trump is this weird quantity that you really just can't really figure out, okay? But Hillary Clinton, you can figure out very easily, okay? And she is a lightning rod, okay? But I mean, there's plenty of loyalists in the DNC that would love to have her come back because they want to fix their mistake. They want to pretend it never happened. So, I mean, don't discount the malign strategies of Hillary Clinton. I mean, this person is just pure evil. This is in the whole machine around her. So yeah, she's in the card. She's in the mix.
Can I just ask a question here? I mean, we have people, we're talking about Hillary Clinton. We have people like Hillary Clinton, Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren. These are all people in their 70s. Am I right in saying this? Donald Trump is a person in their 70s, is in his 70s. These are all people basically who formed their ideas in the 1960s and 1970s. I mean, does anybody in the United States say that the country is becoming a gerontocracy? Because from the outside, that is increasingly how it's starting to look.
Doesn't it really kind of put in stark relief, particularly on the left, when they talk about diversity and all this? What do they get? How do they get these people? I mean, I find that really hilarious. I mean, Spartacus dropped out, Cory Booker. I mean, he was there for comic.
Buttigieg, Wang, Tulsi.
But this is what happens. This is the powerful. I mean, the ones that make it to this part of the campaign, they're the ones that'll keep it going. Okay. I mean, we've spent this podcast looking at all of their differences, but believe me, they got a lot of commonalities. Okay.
Okay. Sparky, a $5 super chat. Bernie's a fake socialist. As mayor of Burlington, he stimulated bourgeois small business. No self-respecting socialist would do that. Okay.
Well, you know, again, I mean, I think I've said this every single time we talk about it. I mean, what socialism means in America, I'm not really sure.
Yeah.
I mean, what it is it's a protest against the status quo. Because I think a lot of people that might call themselves a socialist probably really don't know much about it. It's more of a emotive thing to say than really an ideology you believe in. No, I do know some real dyed in the wool socialists I have through my life, but you know it's more about they see about what the government's obligations should be to the citizenry, and they see that as a good thing. And I always point out that I've lived in socialist countries, and you have very limited options. And if you want to live in a world like that, you might want to, you know, you're not going to, you can't get Birkenstocks and cappuccinos under socialism, okay? I'm sorry, okay? And that's what these people like, all right? So Bernie calls himself a socialist, okay? Let's just leave it at that, okay? I don't think it's really important if he is or isn't. And this is, and the fact that he says he is attractive to people.
All right, Alexander from Sparky, a $5 super chat. Sally Yates replaced Chris Rye at the law firm King and Spalding. Is that a coincidence?
Birds of a feather fly.
No, Peter said it. I mean, it's not a coincidence. Of course, it's not a coincidence. It's exactly what Peter said. I mean, birds of a feather flocking together. That's the only way to look at this, and that's how it is.
Okay, and the final super chat from Sparky. President Trump fell for your BFFs. Pompeo, Haspel, and Abrams BS again and murdered Soleimani, but dodged a bullet. This is the question now. Has he learned not to listen to them?
I hope so. I don't know. I don't think so. I mean,
but I'm glad that you put it dodged the bullet, because it's really interesting, and I've pondered this a lot, is that he went through their game plan at the last second, he dodged, okay?
Yes.
And so he kind of got it both ways, and I think that's how he sees it in his mind.
yes.
One has to wonder if he'll ever write a history of his time in office. I mean, does the ghost of John Bolton haunt him? Because I think that, you can say so many things about Donald Trump, but this man is a survivor. He's like an Erdogan. He knows how to survive, all right? And I mean, I can't think of any person I've ever known in my life that could have endured the onslaught that he's experienced for the last 3 years. No other American politician, they would have folded. They would have folded or quit, okay? And this guy is just so anomalous, okay? It energizes him.
Yes, it energizes him, and he always attacks. He's never someone to sit back and let it happen to him. I mean, the contrast. I get completely different people, very different politics, but the contrast with Jeremy Corbyn in Britain, who was very intimidated and overawed by the barrage of criticism he got, is very instructive. Donald Trump always comes back fighting, and he's always looking for ways round and ways out. He's been lucky in some respects, but he's very clever at making his own luck. And it's actually, looked at from a distance, quite a virtuoso performance, as Peter says.
The interesting thing for me in watching all of this going on is that, in my lifetime, and I'll give you my perception, is that Republicans are not particularly bright, but Democrats are ideologically driven. And, and what has happened here is that it's a remarkable coming of events, is that you have these people, Republicans in Congress, that are able very much to mobilize in defense of Donald Trump. I mean, Nunez, for example, a very, very effective. Gates, the young guy out there in Florida. I think on foreign policy, Gates is a lunatic in many ways, but I mean, he's very clever. And of course, we have to remember the amazing impact of Fox News. I mean, I think it was, we were discussing this on WhatsApp, is that Tucker Carlson, correct me if I'm wrong, Alex Christopher, but he gets about 2.3 million viewers a night, right? And then last week he got on one night at 6 million, okay? That is powerful. That is powerful. I mean, that's one of the most powerful voices in America today is Tucker Carlson. And I have every reason to believe it, but I hear that Trump watches Tucker Carlson every single night. And hopefully he's having a positive influence. And it may have played into the mix of how the standing back, standing aside, because it was a stand down on the part of the United States, not Iran. And I think, Tucker argued a very good case with our favorite Douglas McGregor. I love when he's on. So, I mean, what my kind of in totality is that, the Democrats, they're good at mimicking one-liners. And I guess it's sent out in an email because they can't be reading each other's mind. They just have this one-liners, a talking point. And the Republicans have been very, very good at dissecting them. And they have their bullhorn of Fox News. And this is not an endorsement of everything that Fox does. I think Hannity and Laura last week I found it really pathetic with this Soleimani thing. And of course, this absolute obsession with Iran. I've had it ever since the revolution. I've seen it, and it's gotten to the point of just such gross irrationality that it blinds you to any kind of semblance of looking at things for what they are, instead of projecting what you want to see. And I think Iran is the perfect example. Philip Giraldi has an interesting piece out on this. It's at antiwar.com if you want to check it.
Yeah.
All right, we got one more super chat here from Sparky. Although Trump was misled by Pompeo et al., he made a brilliant recovery from the egregious Soleimani error. He was likely helped by the Ayatollah not being keen on Soleimani, too close for comfort.
I don't know what the internal dynamics are in Iran, but there's no doubt at all that the Iranians, at some level, were working together with Donald Trump to deal.
Oh, absolutely, through the Swiss, absolutely.
Absolutely. I mean, it was, both sides, and Trump deserves a lot of credit because I don't think there were any people in Iran at the top of the Iranian leadership who were seriously looking for escalation. But there's no doubt that there are lots of people in the American leadership who were looking and wanting escalation. But I mean, both sides managed to get together and find a way out. And as an exercise in diplomacy, very short term, very quick diplomacy, but that is diplomacy, Kennedy-style diplomacy, that, the kind of thing that Kennedy did in 1962, during the missile crisis, the Cuban Missile Crisis. Donald Trump did something very similar this time. I mean, he set up the back channel through the Swiss. He cut out Pompeo in the State Department. He was able to broker a compromise directly with the Ayatollah in Iran. So, all credit to him, all credit to Khamenei, the Ayatollah, for going along with it.
Okay, and from Sparky, one final super chat and we'll wrap it up. Fox News is mostly controlled opposition, fake news.
I don't agree with that. I mean, I think, it's, I mean, I work in media, so I'm actually fascinated with Fox. Fox's defense of Trump is way over the top, and I think sometimes it's not helpful, but let's be fair. Fox gives Tucker Carlson free rein, say what he wants. He's very critical of Trump's foreign policy. And then you have someone like Hannity that is just, I mean, he's just an extension of the White House, and I don't think it does him any favors, but his viewers love it. Okay, so nothing succeeds like success. And there's so few news outlets that actually talk up the president. I just wish Hannity wouldn't do it so often the way he does. Yeah. And the same thing with, excuse me, Laura Ingraham. But on whole, at least you get a different side of the story. And you have to give Fox News kudos for the coverage of the Russiagate hoax. Yes. I mean, they did a wonderful job. I mean, absolutely wonderful. It's extraordinary. So many things were revealed. And, you had Tom Fenton on there all the time, and other people that are putting the authorities under the spotlight. And I think that they play a public service. So I'm really glad that they're there. I think it can be a bit excessive at times. And on foreign policy, I'm almost on a daily basis disappointed. But in other respects, they give the other side of the story, because if you look at MSNBC, ABC, CBS, and CNN, I mean, they're all singing from the same hymn sheet, and they look awful. I mean, look at what's happened to CNN. I mean, Jeff Zucker. I mean, why do you still have your job? I mean, you've driven it into the ground. I mean, everybody jokes about it. You know, I was asked, on an interview, said, "Did you see this report by CNN?" And I said, "No, because I don't stay in airports. I mean, I never see it. The only time I hear about it is when I hear about it on Fox. Why would I? If I watch CNN for a minute, that's a minute I'll never get back. Okay, I mean, what's the point?"
I completely agree. I mean, where would we be without Fox News? It doesn't mean that we have to agree with everything that appears on Fox News and what their motives are. I mean, I don't know, and in a sense, I don't really care. The fact of the matter is, without Fox News, most of what we know, which brings out all the details of Russiagate, we wouldn't know because no one else is reporting it. I mean, we've talked about, for example, the Horowitz report. We've talked about the Mueller, the Mueller reports. We've all these things, the Nunes memo. Is Fox? It ultimately came down to Fox to do all the heavy lifting and report it and provide the American people with information about it. So let's not call them a fake opposition channel. I don't know whether they are an opposition channel, what kind of a channel they are. The fact is they are reporting the news.
Okay, and let's be careful. I mean, I think you can really unpack that here. I mean, I understand what the question is getting at, but and to the questioner's credit, Sparky, right?
Yeah.
It is when you talk about what is debatable in American politics, it's very narrow.
Yeah.
It's very narrow, and that's a huge criticism here. The thing that's in play right now is it's less about policy than it is about one person, the occupant of the in the Oval Office in the White House. That's what it's gotten down to, and I really lament that because there's a lot of things that I would like to be discussed more about that are not. And even our discussion here is very focused, and it's within that corridor right there, which I think is lamentable. But that's unfortunately in the hand that we've been dealt. But I get your point. Okay, because Fox News won't cover a lot of things as well. I mean, to Tucker's credit, he talks about the opioid crisis in the United States and how Mexico is turning into a failed state. I mean, you need to hear about these things. But a lot of other people on Fox won't even go there because they're preoccupied with their primary mission, and that is to protect the occupant of the White House. It's sad that we're in this situation.
Yeah, I agree. Remember 3-4 years ago, you had Bill O'Reilly and Hannity, and now you have, and Megyn Kelly, and now you have Tucker Carlson in there. And just the fact that has a Tucker Carlson there, just the fact they have Tucker Carlson, they do give him a lot of leeway. I think that does say a lot for Fox. And we can't forget that, like you said, Peter and Alexander, Fox introduced us to Sarah Carter, John Solomon, all these people who played a huge role in Russiagate.
No, it's played a very important role, and as Alexander Mercure said, we wouldn't have known so many things. But again, I'm not going to just sing the praises of Fox blindly. I mean, their stance on foreign policy overall is pathetic, and it is bipartisan. It's not. They may express it differently, but it's no different than MSNBC and CNN. Okay, with one exception, Tucker with Douglas McGregor and people like that. And he brings on veterans, and he brings on people that know what they're talking about, and not just shooting off talking points like most of the talking heads that have no idea about anything at the other networks, okay, and cable. So, and just to be fair here, we're not making any broad brush judgments.
Yeah, I agree with that. Okay, let's wrap it up then. Thank you guys for joining us on this live stream. Click that subscribe button, click the notifications bell. I'm getting a lot of emails from people saying they're not getting our notifications. So
I didn't get one.
Make sure you click the bell. And if you do click that bell, then it's up to YouTube to fulfill its side of the agreement and send out that notification. And share the channel with everybody that you know, because YouTube is definitely not promoting us anywhere on the site. No. So that really helps us out when you share the channel on other social media. And what else? DRN 20 is still running, 20% off everything in the Duran shop. And if you purchase our ebooks, we are still giving 100% of the proceeds to Australia and the NSW Rural Fire Services as well. So pick up an ebook and help out the NSW Rural Fire Services. I have the link in the description box down below. Peter, what are you looking at for the rest of this week?
I'm going to do a program tomorrow that will air on Friday, and it's called Impeaching Democracy. I think you figured that one out.
All right. And Alexander, what are you looking at?
It's the same things. I mean, the impeachment saga in the United States grinding on to its dreary conclusion, which, as I said, will only work to Trump's advantage. The Middle East situation, which is still very unsettled after the earthquake we had last week. And then, of course, we go back to Russia, where Mr. Putin today is making his address to the Federal Assembly, and again chanting long-term plans and projects for his country, including amendments to the Russian Constitution and steps to step up economic growth, all kinds of things like that. So there's lots to discuss, lots going on around the world.
We have France.
We have France. We have France also, where Monsieur Macron, the Napoleon the Fourth, has been forced, or Louis the 19th has been forced into a great retreat on his much vaunted pension reform. So much to say there also, and lots to look at.
We have
Libya, and even in Britain. I mean, there's a rather interesting debate going on within the Labour Party here after the election defeat. So we will see. There are lots of things going on in the world, but I do think the two focal stories remain the impeachment in the United States and the political struggle there, the power struggle there, because that's what it is ultimately. It has to an outsider, it has all the appearance of a power struggle. And also, as I said, the situation in the Middle East, which is very nervous and unstable.
All right, and a lot of free Assange I'm seeing in the live stream as well.
Well, indeed, if I may say, I mean, I could probably discuss that at great length, because all sorts of people are on the Assange affair, have been becoming involved. Can I just say something there quickly on Assange, which made a very, very big impression on me? I was invited to a poetry event at a British university, and a student who it turned out was from Russia, recited a poem called Paper People, which is all about how politics is in the West, in Britain, is becoming completely fake. And of course, she inserted various words into the poem, which were in support of Julian Assange and Chelsea Manning, which made me, really surprised, actually. And she did it very well. And she was a Russian student. She was from St. Petersburg. So lots going on the Assange front. I've had all kinds of contacts from people on the various campaigns that are trying to support him. And I even have had some very, very peripheral dealings with his legal team.
All right, guys. Thank you to everybody who joined us. Take care. Have a great day, great Wednesday, and have a great week ahead.